Yom HaShoah means day of catastrophe. We symbolically light our chalice today in hope that it may always call us to remember that our actions can change the world and avert destruction.
Good morning, everyone, on this beautiful snowy morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. I'm Reverend Amy Petrie Shaw, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. As always, I'm speaking to you from land which is the traditional territory of the indigenous Iowa people. Kelly Patterson is our celebrant. Give us a wave, Kelly. Say hi. Barb Martin is our song leader, and Bruce Martin is our pianist. Jean McCracken is our pastoral care associate for this week. Lyra Halston, our membership coordinator, is here with us. And if you'd like to be connected to our online groups or learn more, she's going to put an email address in the chat for you. Please keep your mics muted throughout the entire service. Everyone is welcome to unmute and to turn their video cameras on at the end and to join us in coffee hour breakout rooms. Come and let us be here in community together. Kelly, you're muted.
Me. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. I'm Kelly Patterson, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. No matter who you are or where you have come from, you are welcome here. Whether or not you live in Des Moines or have ever physically been a First Unitarian, whoever you are, we hope that here you find thoughts which challenge you, welcome which invites you into community, and people to accompany you as you journey. Our first song, our hymn, is number 360 in the hymn book. Here we have gathered. The words are up on the chat so that you can read them as you sing. Please keep your mics muted and sing along with us as you would like.
Sing now
Thank you so much, Barb and Bruce. This morning, our Time for All Ages is a story called Benno and the Night of Broken Glass by Meg Wivio, illustrated by Josie Bisalian, and it's read by our own Torrin Lackman.
Benno and the Night of Broken Glass by Meg Wivio. Benno the cat lives at number 6 Rosenstrasse in Berlin, just a few blocks away from the Neue Synagogue. He had a nice warm bed near the furnace where Hans, the Hausmeister, left him fresh milk every night. On Friday nights, Benno visited the Alder family in apartment 3B. He watched Mrs. Alder light Sabbath candles, Mr. Alder slice a braided loaf of bread, and Sophie sing from a book she held close. After dinner, Sophie fed him scraps of chicken. On Sundays after church, Benno visited the Schmidts across the hall in the apartment, 3A, for their family lunch. Before Mrs. Schmidt cleared the dishes for dessert, Inga seeked bits of schnitzel to him under the table. On weekday mornings, Benno watched Herr Alder and Herr Schmidt leave for work. He waited as Inga came out of her apartment and knocked on Sophie's door. Benno purred when the girls knelt to wish him Guten Morgen. Then he followed them to school. During the day, Benno strolled around the neighborhood. Sometimes Moshe, the butcher, fed him scraps from Frau Gerber, the grocer's wife, scratched his ear. Often he took naps nestled among the bolts of fabric in the sunny window of Mitzi Stein's dress shop. In the late afternoon, Benno followed Inga and Sophie to the playground. He sat high in a tree as they played on the swings or dashed about in a game of tag with their friends. Benno was welcomed by all, even into apartment 2G, where Professor Goldfarb was too busy with his studies to pay attention when the cat curled up on his desk. At night, Bento returned to his bed beside the furnace in the basement of number 5 Rosenstrasse. He drank his milk and fell asleep listening to the comforting sounds of the people above. Then things began to change. Moshe the butcher had no scraps for Benno. Frau Gerber, the grocer's wife, had no time to scratch his ears, and Mitzi yelled, "Scat!" when Benno tried to nap in the window. One night, men in brown shirts lit a bonfire in Rosenstrasse. As they threw books and paper onto the fire, the crowds cheered. Benno fled and tried to hide inside apartment 2G, but Professor Goldfarb shooed him away. "I must save the books," the professor muttered. A few days later, Benno watched Inga leave for school without knocking on Sophie's door. He waited a long time before Sophie came out and walked to school alone. Neither girl wished him Guten Morgen. After school, Benno watched Inga and her friends at the playground. Sophie hurried past the park, her head low. Later, when Benno went home, he found the door to apartment 3B locked. Rosenstrasse was still a busy street, but the people were no longer friendly. The men in brown suits strutted about with their heads held high, Benno walking carefully, dodging their heavy black boots. The neighbors and shopkeepers went quietly about their business, their eyes lowered. Then came a night like no other. The air filled with screams and shouts of shattering and splintering glass, and the bitter smell of smoke. Benno cowered in a doorway. He watched the brown-shirted men swarm over the neighborhood, smashing the windows and looting shops. At Moshe's butcher shop, they overturned the refrigerators, leaving meat to spoil on the ground. At Mitzi Stein's shop, they ripped the bolts of fabric and threw the sewing machines onto the street. Benno saw the beautiful Neue Synagogue set ablaze. The Torah scrolls were dragged into the street and trampled. Herr Gerber's grocery remained untouched. Back at number 5 Rosenstrasse, Benno saw the Hausmeister let the brown shirts into the building and direct them to certain apartments. They broke into Professor Goldfarb's apartment and tore his books and papers from their shelves. "I must save the books," the professor said as he was dragged away. Benno ran upstairs. In apartment 3B, the mob was breaking the Alder's furniture and throwing books out the window, even the ones Sophie sang from every Friday night. The Smith's apartment was untouched. The next morning, Benno saw Herr Schmidt leave for work. Then Ing left for school. He waited for Sophie, but the Alder's door remained closed. Outside, smoldering fire stung Benno's eyes. His paws were cut and sore from the broken glass that littered the streets. Smoke from the gilded dome of the Neue Synagogue rose into the morning sky. Missy Stein was sweeping up the glass in front of her store. Herr Gerber's grocery store was open for business as usual. Benno could not find Moshe the butcher. He never saw Professor Goldfarb or Sophie and her family ever again. Benno continued to sleep in his bed by the furnace. Hans continued to give him fresh milk, and Frau Gerber scratched his ears. Benno still watched Herr Schmidt leave for work. He still followed Inga to school, but life on Rosenstrasse would never be the same.
Thank you so much for reading that for us, Torin. Karen Kramer and the UCDSM choir have recorded a new piece for us today. It's a Jewish traditional prayer called Ana Elna. The entire prayer only has 11 letters, and it means, please God heal her. And when this prayer was done, it was a shout. It was 4 words shouted out in great pain. It was supposedly when Moses' sister Miriam was very sick, and he was so upset that all he could do was beg this one line, please God heal her. And I'm going to bring this up. As you can tell, Zoom is acting a little haywire this morning, so I am bringing this up now. Hold on just a second. Our offering is done this morning with our normal seriousness. If we're going to ask you for money, at least it shouldn't hurt and we should be able to make you laugh. In surgery for a heart attack, a middle-aged woman has a vision of God from her bedside. Will I die? She says. God says, oh no, you have 30 more years to live. With 30 years to look forward to, the woman decides, well, I'm going to make the best of this. Since she's in the hospital anyway, she decides to have liposuction and a tummy tuck, hair transplants and collagen injections in her lips, cheekbone implants. She looks great. And the day she's discharged, she goes out the front door with a swagger, crosses the street, and is immediately hit by a bus and killed. Up in heaven, she sees God, and she says, you said I had 30 more years. What's this all about? And that's true, said God. I did. Well, what happened? God shrugged and said, I don't know. I didn't recognize you. So if any of you are considering having a little work done, why risk it? Give the money to us instead. We want you to live those 30 years. The morning offering will now be given and received through the link in the chat, and 1/2 of this electronic plate goes to our internal social justice work, and 1/2, as always, goes to our Faith in Action partners, Planned Parenthood and Central Iowa Immigrant Support Coalition. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you to each and every one of you for everything that you do for the life and the work of this community. Because being a church isn't about whether or not you're in the building. Being a church is about community. It's about being there for one another in the good times and the bad and all the in-between times. It's about bearing witness and ministering to one another as we struggle with life's sorrows and celebrate life's joys. We have a joy this week in that our Faith in Action program is still strong and still doing things with our partners. They would like to ask, and I'm putting it in the chat right now, they would like to ask that you take a moment this week and fill out this 4-question survey. It's on our website. If you go to the front page of the website, there's a link on the left, but I've got the link in here. It's really 4 questions, takes less than 5 minutes. Please help us continue to do the joyful work of partnering this year and next year. I ask now that you share in the chat the names of anyone you know who could use some special care and attention this week. And as we type their names into the chat, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world, and may the work of our hands and our hearts support, aid, and comfort all those who are marginalized, oppressed, silenced, or at risk. May we never look away when we are needed. May those who are grieving be comforted. May you be comforted. May those who are tired find rest. May you find rest. May the broken places be healed. May you be healed. May those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant. Each week we light 3 real or virtual candles, one for any joys and sorrows spoken here, one for all the names that we have written, and one last candle for all of the joys and all of the sorrows which are deeply held in our hearts, but which remain unspoken here today.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul.
Thank you, Barb. Our first reading this morning is entitled Danger and Opportunity from a Caretaker's Prayer by Rabbi Patricia Carlin Neumann. Medical sociologist Alexandria Dundas Todd begins Double Vision, a memoir of her son's treatment and recovery from brain cancer, with this reflection. The Chinese word for crisis consists of 2 characters, danger and opportunity. When my son, Drew, a senior in college, was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer bordering his brain, the danger was clear. The opportunity was less apparent. Danger flashed through our lives daily, while opportunities lay waiting in murky waters to emerge only tentatively. Family closeness, the ability to savor each moment, to find strength and courage where we didn't know they existed, to discover new methods of treatment that complemented all the surgeries and radiation and eased both body and mind, all contributed to making the unbearable bearable, turning an assault into a challenge. It does indeed take double vision to see both blessing and curse, to picture opportunity amidst danger. Courage grows through hope, through the willingness to look for unknown possibilities and to grasp them, through refusing to see only danger and darkness when its counterpart, opportunity, may be waiting in the shadows. The prayer of the caregiver, the cry of the distraught parent, the reassuring whisper of the loving spouse can help to wrest some measure of opportunity out of danger.
We remember today and every day the tragedy of the Holocaust, not to dwell in the pain, but to breathe hope into the world, to continue the lives and the stories of those who were lost, and to allow them to continue to be a blessing. We work for peace so that we never again will have to live in horror. Holding these words in mind, please join me in 1 minute of silent thought, meditation, or prayer.
Our second reading is entitled Amidah, On Our Feet We Speak to You, by Marge Piercy. We rise to speak, a web of bodies aligned like notes of music. Bless what brought us through the sea and the fire. We are caught in history like whales in polar ice. Yet you have taught us to push against the walls, to reach out and pull each other along, to strive to find the way through if there is no way around, to go on. To utter ourselves with every breath against the constriction of fear, to know ourselves as a body born from Abraham and Sarah, born out of rock and desert. We reach back through 200 arches of hips, long dust, carrying their memories inside us to live again in our life. Isaac and Rebecca, Rachel, Jacob, and Leah. We say words shaped by ancient use like steps worn into rock. Bless the quiet of sleep, easing over the ravaged body, who quiets the troubled waters of the mind to a pool in which shines the placid, broad face of the moon. Bless what stirs in us compassion for the hunger of the chickadee in the storm, starving for seeds we can carry out. The wounded cat wailing in the alley, what shows us our face in a stranger, who teaches us what we clutch shrivels, but what we give goes off in the world, carrying bread to people not yet born. Bless the gift of memory that breaks unbidden, released from a flower or a cup of tea, so the dead move like rain through the room. Bless what forces us to invent goodness every morning and what never frees us from the cost of knowledge, which is to act on what we know again and again. All lives are one and holy. Let us remember as we eat, as we work, as we walk and drive, all living are one and holy. We must make ourselves worthy. We must act out of justice and mercy and healing as the sun rises and as the sun sets, as the moon rises and the stars wheel above us. We must repair goodness. We will try to be holy. We will repair the world given us to hand on. Precious is this treasure of words and knowledge and deeds that moves inside us. Holy is the hand that works for peace and for justice. Holy is the mouth that speaks for goodness. Holy is the foot that walks toward mercy. Let us lift each other on our shoulders and carry each other along. Let holiness move in us. Let us pay attention to its small voice. Let us see the light in others and honor that light. Remember the dead who paid our way here dearly, dearly, and remember the unborn for whom we build our houses. Praise the light that shines before us, through us, after us. Amen. Our next song is number 108, My Life Flows On, and in the song, the words will be in your chat.
My life flows on in endless song above life's lamentation. I hear the real, though far heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing when tyrants tremble at their ear, the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near? How can I keep from singing to prison cell and dungeon vile? Our thoughts through them are winging, when friends by shame are undefiled. How can I keep from singing?
That was gorgeous. Thank you, Barb and Bruce. We've done some amazing things as a congregation this last year, even during a pandemic. We're trying to live into our values, to honor those who came before us, to make a way for those who come next. And the social justice leadership team, with the help of Kent Newman, has put together a video to show you what First Unitarian has done to keep our chalice burning bright. Are a mid-sized church in a mid-sized city in the middle of America. We are First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. And while we haven't been able to gather together here for most of 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic,
we haven't gone away either.
We have still been called to work together and side with love in many places.
Our anti-hunger ministry, FEDS, or Feed Every Deserving Soul or Stomach, prepared and served about 1,400 meals at Central Iowa Shelter and Services and at Children and Family Urban Movement during the first 9 months of 2020, when the economic impact of the pandemic left increasing numbers of our neighbors hungry. First Unitarian was there.
Church members also joined together to support a transgender asylum seeker from Honduras. Our financial support has fully provided her with housing, clothing, access to medical care, and legal representation since her arrival. In response to the need for refuge from transphobic oppression, persecution, and violence, First Unitarian was there.
we read the Unitarian Universalist Association's report, Widening the Circle of Concern. We gathered together virtually to discuss it and to listen to what it revealed, with the hope of beginning to learn how to be an even more welcoming and inclusive church. Others gathered virtually to engage in the social justice-based curriculum, Wellspring, Faithful Actions, so that we could also be better prepared to act lovingly for justice. When called to better hear, welcome, and center those kept on the margins of our faith, First Unitarian was there.
The Immigration Justice Ministry partnered with the Latinx Knock and Drop program to use our church building as a distribution center for much-needed food in the immigrant community. What food they can give away depends on what they are able to access. In the first Knock and Drop event, they gave away over 5 tons of chicken to immigrant families. Since then, 6 to 8 additional food giveaways went to at least 30 to 35 families each time. During the holiday season, church members also sponsored 55 of those families by providing toys and other holiday gifts. When some of the most vulnerable in our community faced food insecurity and increased need, First Unitarian was there.
The Unitarian Universalist for Social Justice Capitol Hill Advocacy Corps monthly Right Here, Right Now campaign calls us to raise our collective voices for justice, equity, and compassion by writing en masse to our public officials. Among the approximately 9,900 letters delivered in the past 3 years were more than 550 letters from our church members. When there was a continued need during this difficult year to speak up for justice and structural change, First Unitarian was there.
Despite the obstacles of the pandemic, we still served families experiencing homelessness by continuing to participate in the Family Promise program. Each time we hosted, we provided a week's worth of meals, snacks, social engagement, and overnight hospitality to multiple families, which helped them to stay safe during this pandemic. When our neighbors needed shelter and safety during this crisis, First Unitarian was there.
As a member of AMOS, a Mid-Iowa organizing strategy, our church has partnered with other congregations and organizations to tackle the issues that keep us up at night by sparking changes in the greater community on a systemic and structural level. We became involved because we know that organizing people is the best way to create change in our community. Because we remember that we are stronger when we all work together as part of the same great web of existence, First Unitarian was there.
Our church members, in an anti-racism partnership with Just Voices, the ACLU of Iowa, the NAACP, AMOS, Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, the Methodist Iowa Conference, Plymouth United Church of Christ, Iowa Latinos, and the Des Moines Human Rights Commission have worked for years to pass a city ordinance banning racial profiling. We are now on the verge of passing that ordinance, which would apply to all city employees, including the police. When cries rose up calling for equity, justice, compassion, and respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all, First Unitarian was there.
Another way we continue to build and maintain community partnerships is our church's Faith in Action program. Through Faith in Action, we give our time, service, and financial support to nonprofit organizations also striving to make a difference in the community. Though the pandemic limited our ability to engage in face-to-face service this year, our congregation still provided financial support of over $16,000 to 6 community partners. When called to increase our impact by working in partnership with others, First Unitarian was there.
To those who kept striving in 2020 to side with love in so many ways, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To those still being called to find new ways to side with love,
We welcome you. Please join us.
Those who want to know more about what it means to side with love, we invite you to come and be curious together.
We don't know where we'll end up in 2021, but we know we won't stop following the moral arc of the universe as it continues to bend toward justice.
We know we will continue to strive to side with love to vanquish hate.
And we know it will take
all of us.
Thank you to all of you who've done so much this year. And thank you to the Social Justice Leadership Team for putting together that video with the help of Kent Newman. Remembering what we do is important. Now, I'm a bit of a gambler by nature. And I have a bet that I would make today. I would bet $100 that less than 5 of you thought about the Alamo this week. I'd say nobody, but your Unitarian Universalists somewhere out there, one of you is reading an 800-page book about Texas history. But I'll go with less than 5. Less than 5 of you remembered the Alamo this week. As a nation, we forget things quickly. They come, they go, no matter how tragic, things vanish. Yom HaShoah is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it's important because if we don't remember, if we don't personalize it, if we don't make it a part of our story, it just becomes that yearly day that pops up on the calendar where everybody says, oh yeah, we should watch Schindler's List again. This is one tragedy that we must remember. In 2008, there was a wonderful article in Haaretz, which is an Israeli daily newspaper. And it was written by Yair Edinger. He wrote, one day about 8 years ago, Dr. Ron Fulman walked into a tattoo studio on Tel Aviv's Dizengoff Street, accompanied by his parents. And he asked his father to bare his left forearm and to show that area there. And he told the tattooist, I want an exact copy of that tattoo. The original inscription, B1367, was tattooed by a German soldier into the arm of the 10-year-old boy who would grow up to be Ron Fulman's dad. It was put there in June of 1944, on the day that child was brought to Auschwitz. Rabbi David Weisberg writes, Yair Edinger, the reporter of that story, talks about the father's experiences during the Shoah and how when his son Ron proposed this idea to him, he was appalled. Orthodox Jews do not believe in getting tattooed. So this was an appalling idea. He eventually cooperated because he understood his son's desire to replicate the tattoo as an act of solidarity, as an act of living memory, as a way to make this story part of his own story in a way that he could not back away from. More interesting is Ron's perspective, the man who got the tattoo. He said the tattoo wasn't done as a demonstration or a public statement. It was about my relationship with my father and family members who survived and those who didn't. My father was sick at the time, and for the first time, I felt in real danger of losing him. So it was purely emotional. I didn't think of the meaning. It was an act of a man who sees his father in the hospital, and suddenly all the years he absorbed between the lines, the pain, the tears, everything burst out. Until then, Ron said, I had suppressed feelings associated with the Holocaust, but when I saw him laying there, I wanted to make a private statement about my feelings toward him and the Holocaust. It was a desire to tell him that his son understands what he'd been through and shares the pain. As for the Holocaust, perhaps it was to tell myself that I would never forget. Ron Fulman made the Holocaust personal. He put those numbers on his arm by choice, and he held on to his father's experience, and he passed them along to the next generation. It takes personalization to hold on to something this big, because we humans aren't good at imagining things that by their very nature defy imagination. The bitter fight for Texas independence became a half-forgotten slogan. Remember the Alamo? It has no weight anymore. Remember the Alamo. Alamo is better known now for being a rental car company because we all forgot. You can't forget the Holocaust because fascism has an ugly way of coming back. 6 million Jews died for being Jews. 1.5 million of those were children. Another 5 million Gentiles and others, many for helping Jewish friends and neighbors. 30 million more war casualties. Those numbers, excuse me, those numbers are so big, they become an abstraction. It's like trying to think of 400,000 dead from COVID. Your brain cannot conceptualize what that is. That's why Americans tend to measure everything in football stadiums, because we can get that. But 6 million is an abstraction. Rabbi Barney Kasdan, in his article Never Forget, writes that the Christian community should also be concerned about Yom HaShoah is best illustrated by the quote from Pastor Martin Niemöller, himself a prisoner of Dachau. It's shocking to realize that Hitler essentially accomplished his final solution to the Jewish problem in the lands that the Nazi troops conquered. One can only wonder what would have happened if the Nazis had not been defeated by the Allied forces. Undefeated fascism is a terrible thought. It's the opposite of everything that most of us believe in. Fascism is far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalism. We've seen it in our own country over the past few months. It relies on a dictator in high office and use of force to suppress the opposition, a belief that a totalitarian one-state party is essential for protection and economic survival, and it leads unerringly to nightmares like the Holocaust. Rabbi Weisberg says, it's not enough to never forget, we must continue to feel. The Shoah is part of who we are. It's not that we should live our lives as if we're on the verge of destruction. We must use this annual day, Yom HaShoah, to remind ourselves that we should never forget. We must act and find ways to bring these stories to the next generation and beyond in a way that brings it to life and transmits its meaning and weight and passes the human connection on. These are not abstractions. This is part of our human story. We have to remember, but not unthinkingly. It can't become a slogan. We have to remember and to care about the memory. It has to be important. In our first reading this morning, Rabbi Patricia Carlin Newman said, courage grows through hope, through willingness to look for unknown possibilities and to grasp them, through refusing to see only danger in the darkness. And that's the other part of this refusing to forget. We remember the atrocities. We have to remember the atrocities. We remember the people lost. But we also remember and personalize the courage and the strength and the ingenuity and the humor of those who died and those who fought for them. The Shoah also reminds us that in the midst of horror, there are those who shine with love and care for other humans. Their brilliance stands in contrast to the horrors. There's an amazing story that you can find out there on the internet. Bored Panda covered it extensively. In 1939, right as World War II was starting, there was a young British stockbroker, Nicholas Winton. And Nicholas Winton ended up doing something incredible. He risked his life to save 669 Jewish children from Czechoslovakia during the Holocaust and getting them to Britain. He wrote them fake papers. He helped them get snuck out. And here's the fun thing. Like any other superhero, he never mentioned it again. not to friends, not to family, not to his wife. He simply never mentioned it again. His wife didn't know until she found a scrapbook in the attic of their home where he'd written their names and their pictures and all of the copies of fake documents that he had made to get them out. Queen Elizabeth knighted Nicholas in 2003. He got the Czech Order of the White Lion in 2014, and he died in 2015 at 106. But before he died, he appeared on a TV program in the UK called That's Life. And this gentle man, you can find the video of this. It is worth a watch. Nicholas Winton. This gentle man is pictured sitting there in the audience, having no idea why he's there. He thinks he's just been invited to be a part of the audience. And at one point in the show, they finally make him aware that every other member of the audience is a child whose life he saved. They managed to find over 600 of them still alive, and they packed that audience with those children. And that man sat there and cried because he couldn't believe that anybody would have gone to the trouble for him. The Holocaust was his Holocaust. He made it his business. He made the dead his dead. In the slightly paraphrased words of Charles Dickens' Jacob Marley, humanity is our business. The common welfare is our business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence, our business. The dealings of our trades are but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of our business. Because you see, fascism cannot flourish if the world is not divided into us and them. It can't rise if there is no one to fear and hate. It can't win if we put people first. It can't win if we remember. What's the most important lesson of Yom HaShoah? If you don't want it to happen again, make it personal. Remember it. All the stories of horror, all the atrocities, yes, all the people, all the lives, who they were. Feel the weight of that loss, and also feel the stories of those who shone. The stories of bravery and compassion and love. Make it personal. In the words of Rabbi Stephen Moskowitz, history can be tiresome. It can be draining. It can feel like it's pulling you down, but if we forget, we abet evil. If we have refused to light a candle year after year, then our tormentors can rise again, perhaps with different names and in different lands, but they will flourish if we turn aside, if we choose silence. The Holocaust has to be our Holocaust. Choose love, not silence. Choose memory. And remember that we are one human family, and this is our human story. Remember the Shoah. Amen.
Thank you, Amy. We extinguish our symbolic chalice and we carry into the world the lights of hope, justice, and mercy. Our final song today is number 1053 in the blue hymnal. Could anyone ever tell you? The words will be in the chat screen. Please keep your mics muted and sing along at home if you would like.
How
May we always strive to be worth the price the dead have paid, and may we ourselves build platforms for the work of those yet to come. Peace, Ashe, and may it be so.